Another day, another story. These fast ships and navigational tools aided European sailors between the 15th and 17th centuries. Welcome to Tabot Eminent Channel. The Age of Exploration was a period from about the 15th to the 17th centuries in which European powers traveled to and colonized territories around the globe. Portugal and Spain were the dominant seafaring and colonizing powers in the beginning of this period. By the end of the Age of Exploration, the principal European colonizers were Britain, France and the Netherlands. The Age of Exploration, spanning roughly from the 15th to the 17th century, was a period of significant maritime exploration and expansion. During this era, European nations sent out explorers to discover new lands, trade routes, and resources. Several types of ships and navigational tools played crucial roles in facilitating these voyages of discovery. Here are some of the key ships and navigational tools used during this period. European powers invented new types of ships, weapons and navigational tools during the Age of Exploration to aid their sea voyages and colonial campaigns. 1. Caravel. In the 15th century, Portugal started producing a new kind of ship called the caravel. These medium-sized ships had 2 or 3 masts with triangular sails and only required a small crew. They became one of the key types of ships that Portuguese and Spanish sailors used to traverse unfamiliar routes during the Age of Exploration. The caravel was a small, highly maneuverable sailing ship that played a pivotal role in the Age of Exploration. Its design allowed it to sail efficiently both with and against the wind. Caravels were used for exploration, trade, and even naval warfare. They were favored by explorers like Christopher Columbus and Vasco da Gama. Caravels were faster and easier to maneuver than large ships, but their smaller size meant they had less cargo space. The Niña and Pinta ships that the Columbus sailed to the Bahamas in 1492 on behalf of Spain were both caravels. However, the Santa Maria ship on that voyage was a larger type of vessel, the carrack. 2. Carrack. The carrack ships that Portugal produced during the 15th century were larger than caravels, and had 3 or 4 masts with square and triangular sails. Carracks were slower and less maneuverable than caravels, but they were sturdier in rough waters. Because they had much more storage space than caravels, Portuguese and Spanish crews used them for longer trips to Asian spice markets. Carracks were another type of large sailing ship used during the Age of Exploration. They were versatile vessels capable of carrying large amounts of cargo and passengers. Carracks had a high forecastle and a stern castle, providing extra deck space for crew and equipment. One of the most famous carrack ships from the Age of Exploration is the Victoria, the first known ship to circumnavigate the globe. The Portuguese sailor Ferdinand Magellan led this journey from 1519 until his death in 1521. He died while trying to attack an island in the Philippines. The ship continued its journey without him and completed its circumnavigation in 1522. 3. Galleon. In the 16th century, large galleon ships began to replace carracks. Galleons could carry cargo as well as heavy cannons, yet were faster and easier for crews to maneuver than the smaller carracks. An even larger version of the galleon, the Spanish galleon, could hold up to 60 cannons. Galleons were larger, heavily armed ships with a combination of square-rigged and fore and aft sails. They were known for their stability, carrying capacity, and endurance. Galleons were used for long-distance exploration, trade, and military purposes. The Spanish treasure fleet, for instance, used galleons to transport valuable goods from the New World to Spain. European sailors used galleon ships to transport stolen goods from colonized lands and to fight in battles. The use of galleons in battle declined after the Age of Exploration as newer, sleeker warships emerged. However, European sailors continued to use galleons as cargo ships into the 19th century. 4. Falconet. The falconet was one of the many types of cannons that European ships carried during the Age of Exploration. The falconet was a light cannon on wheels that sailors could use at sea or on land. The term falconet can refer to a few different historical items, but in the context of the Age of Exploration and maritime history, it's often associated with a type of small cannon used on ships and in field artillery. The falconet was a small cannon characterized by its lightweight design and relatively small caliber. It was commonly used during the 16th to 18th centuries on ships, fortifications, and for field artillery. Falconets were often used by naval vessels during the Age of Exploration due to their versatility and ability to be mounted on smaller ships. These cannons could fire various types of projectiles and were effective against both ships and land-based targets. The name, falconet, likely originated from the French word, falcon, meaning falcon. It's believed that the name was chosen due to the cannon's small size and swift firing capabilities, similar to the attributes of a falcon in flight. Falconets came in different sizes, but they were generally characterized by their light weight and ease of maneuverability. They played a role in naval warfare, coastal defense, and in supporting ground troops during battles. Over time, as artillery technology advanced, larger and more powerful cannons were developed, leading to the decline of the falconet's use. In summary, during the Age of Exploration, falconet cannons were a type of small artillery piece commonly used on ships and in field artillery due to their lightweight design and versatility. They contributed to naval warfare and played a part in the expansion of European powers during their exploratory and military endeavors. Another cannon on these ships was the culverin, a medieval field cannon that sailors started using at sea during the Age of Exploration. There was also the Lombard cannon, which the crew on Columbus's 1492 voyage reportedly fired to alert the ships that a lookout had spotted land. 5. Traverse board. One of the tools that European seafarers used to navigate while sailing their caravels, carracks and galleons was the traverse board. Crew members used these boards to keep track of a ship's speed and direction. The traverse board, also known as the traverse board or traverse table, was a navigational tool used on sailing ships before the widespread adoption of more advanced navigational instruments. It was particularly common during the Age of Exploration and the centuries following it, up until the development of more accurate methods for tracking a ship's course and position. At the end of a specific time period, often every half hour or hour, the navigator would use the pegs on the traverse board to calculate an average course and direction. This information could be used to estimate the ship's position and to make adjustments for a more accurate course. The traverse board was a simple yet effective tool for its time, allowing navigators to track their ship's course and make rudimentary calculations. The traverse board was essentially a wooden board divided into sections or points. It was used to record the ship's course and direction over time. Here's how it worked. The top half of the board had a compass rose design with slots for wooden pegs. Every half hour, the sailor keeping watch with the traverse board would look at a compass to determine what direction the ship was going in, and then mark that direction on the board using a wooden peg. On the bottom half of the board, the sailor on watch would also mark the ship's speed with wooden pegs. 6. Backstaff. The backstaff was another important navigational tool for seafarers. Sailors used the backstaff to measure altitude by looking at the shadow of the sun. It was an improvement compared to previous tools for measuring altitude like the quadrant and the cross staff, which required the user to stare into the sun. The backstaff, also known as the Davis quadrant, was a navigational instrument used for measuring the altitude of celestial bodies, particularly the sun, to determine a ship's latitude at sea. It was invented by the English navigator John Davis in the late 16th century as an improvement over earlier navigational tools like the astrolabe and quadrant. The backstaff was particularly useful because it allowed navigators to measure the altitude of the sun without directly looking at it. This was important because staring at the sun could damage the navigator's eyes. Here's how the backstaff worked. The backstaff was made up of a wooden staff or bar with a sighting vane attached to one end. The other end of the staff had a graduated scale. The backstaff had a pivoting arm that could be moved along the staff. The English sailor John Davis invented one of the most well-known versions of the backstaff in 1594 while searching for a northwest passage through the Arctic. Because of this, the backstaff is also known as the Davis quadrant. 7. Sextant. Another navigational tool sailors used during the Age of Exploration was the sextant. Like the backstaff, the sextant was a form of celestial navigation, so called because these tools used celestial bodies in the sky to take measurements and determine a ship's position. The sextant is a navigational instrument that played a crucial role in maritime navigation, especially during the Age of Exploration and beyond. It allowed sailors to measure the angles between celestial bodies, such as the sun, moon, and stars, and the horizon. With this information, navigators could determine their latitude and, when combined with accurate timekeeping, could also calculate their longitude. The sextant represented a significant advancement in navigational accuracy compared to earlier instruments like the quadrant and backstaff. Sailors used sextants to measure the angle between the horizon and a celestial body in the sky, such as the sun, the moon, or a star. They used these measurements to determine the ship's longitude and latitude. Thanks for watching. Request you to subscribe the channel.